Today we're going to talk about percent word problems. So remember, the percent proportion is only used when you are using percentages to compare numbers. So we kind of set up the examples here, right? We look at the part over the whole is equal to percent out of 100. It's always out of 100. So some clue words: is over of equals a percent out of 100, because is clues you into the part, of clues you into the whole. Remember that I think it's easiest to start with the percent, then go to the whole, because the whole comes always after that word of, and then is. It might look a little bit different with word problems. You also want to look at, what in the problem is talking about the total. That's going to clue you into the whole. So let's look at number 1. Solve the following percent problems. At Hogwarts, 270 students ride their broom to school. If this number is 72% of the entire school, then how many students go to Hogwarts? So let's first think about what two things we are comparing here. We're comparing something to the total amount. Well, this is talking about the total students. And the other unit that we're talking about is those that ride their brooms. So I'm going to say broom riders. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle a couple things and highlight a couple things. So we've got 270 is one of our numbers. 72% is another one of our numbers. And then I'm going to highlight the question: how many students go to Hogwarts? Okay? So no matter what, we know that this bottom right is always out of 100. Okay? The next thing I'm looking for is the percent. So I see a percent sign, 72%, so I know that that goes above the 100 because the percent always goes above there. Now I need to look at the other number that's given to us. Okay? We have 270. Is that talking about the students that ride their brooms, or is that talking about the total students? Well, it says 270 students ride their broom to school. So that's talking about the broom riders, which means we should be solving for the total students. If we look at what we highlighted, the question, it says, how many students go to Hogwarts? That is talking about our total number there. Now, we've got our percent proportion. I'm going to highlight my two diagonals. And we should know how to solve a proportion now. So I'm going to multiply the two numbers in the same diagonal. 270 times 100 equals 27,000. And I'm dividing by the number in the same diagonal as the variable, so we're dividing by 72, which equals 375. Since the word problem, we should be including units in our answer. So what were we talking about? What were we solving for here? Well, X matches up with total students. So 375 students, or 375 total students, would be the answer. All right, number 2. The Chicago Cubs won 60% of the 160 games they played this season. How many games did they win? So again, I'm going to go through, I'm going to circle the numbers in the problem. We've got 60%, we've got 160, and then I'm going to highlight the question. The question asks, how many games did they win? So, first off, I know in my proportion, this bottom right is always going to be out of 100 for the percent proportion. I know that the bottom is always going to be talking about the total, but what is the other unit that we're talking about here? So we're looking at the total games they played, but we're also looking at the games that they won. So that's the other unit, the games they won. Okay? So again, the first thing I always look for in the problem is I look for the percent. So either percent sign or the word percent. I see our percent sign. That tells me that that has to go above the 100. So we've already used that number. Now we're figuring out, okay, 160. Is that talking about the games that they won or the total amount of games? So the Chicago Cubs won 60% of the 160 games they played this season. So the 160 games is the games they played. That's the total amount of games. We don't know how many games they won, because if we look at their question, it says, how many games did they win? That is our unknown. Now we've got our proportion set up. Gonna highlight my two diagonals. Now I'm going to multiply the two numbers in the same diagonal, so 160 times 60 equals 9,600. And I'm going to divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable. Divide by 100, we get 96. Well, what were we solving for? X matches up with the games 1, so 96 games 1. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 3. John spent $15 of his $200 budget. What percent of his budget did he spend? Okay, so again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle some of that key information. And then I'm going to highlight what the question is asking. Okay. Then I'm going to fill out the basics of our proportion. So I always know the bottom right is 100. Okay. And now on the front page, I put in there that we had the total, right? This should have been total games. I'll add that in there. Okay. Over here, we need to figure out. We know that the bottom is going to be the total, but what are we talking about in this problem? We're talking about the money spent or total budget. Okay. The other unit is he has a certain amount that he can spend, but the other thing that we're comparing is what he spent. So money spent compared to his total budget. Okay. So now let's start plugging in what we know. The first thing I always look for is a percent sign. I don't see a percent sign anywhere, but I do see the word percent. So when it says what percent, that means we don't know the percentage, so we're going to put an X above the 100. Now we have to figure out 15 and 200, which one goes on top, which one goes on the bottom. So we have John spent $15 of his $200 budget, okay? I think it's easy to kind of find his, the total first. We could look for our keyword of. Remember that the whole always comes after the word of, so 200 comes after the word of. But that 200 is also talking about the total amount of money he has. 15 is just the part that he spent. So that is the money spent out of his total budget. We've got our proportion set up. We're going to highlight our two diagonals and solve. The two numbers that are in the same diagonal that we multiply, 15 times 100 equals 1,500. We divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable. Divide by 200. We get 7 5/10, 7.5. Well, what were we solving for here? We were solving for the percent, so the answer should be 7.5%. All right, number 4. Jerry received a 7 out of 12 on his most recent social studies quiz. What percent did he get on the quiz? So remember, we're talking about you shouldn't ever have to ask your teacher again what percent you got, because you should be able to use these percent proportions to solve. So let's fill out our basic information here. So I'm going to circle my key numbers. 7, 12. What percent did he get on the quiz is the question. Let's plug in. We know the bottom right should be out of 100. Let's think about the units that we're talking about. So we know that the bottom should always be the total, okay? Well, let's think about, for this problem, Jerry received a 7 out of 12 on his social studies quiz. So that would be its total points on the quiz, okay? And then the other thing that we're looking at, he received 7, so that's how many he got correct. So I'd say correct answers is the top choice, okay? Or a top unit. Now let's go ahead and look for the key parts. So the first thing I always look for is percent. Do I see a percent sign by any of my numbers? No, but I do see the word percent. So it says what percent, that means we don't know the percentage, so I'm going to put a variable there. Now I have to figure out 7 and 12. Which one is the part? Which one's the whole? I'm going to look for the whole first. Again, if we look for our keyword of, okay, out of 12, whatever number comes after the word of tells us our whole. But also, the quiz is out of 12 points. That's the total amount of points on the quiz. 7 is the part that he got right. Those are the ones that he got correct. Now we've got our proportion. Let's highlight our diagonals to simplify. All right. The two numbers that we need to multiply here are 7 and 100, which equals 700. We are going to divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable, divide by 12. 700 divided by 12, you get about 58 and 3/10. And what we are solving for is the percent. All right, one more and then on to the U try. At Target, the price of pants has been reduced to $22. This price is at 55% of the original price for pants. Given this, what was the original price of the pants? So I'm going to circle my key numbers in here, 22 and 55, and I'm going to highlight the question. What was the original price of the pants? Filling out, we know the bottom right should be 100. We know the bottom unit should be the total something, okay? In this problem, we're talking about, we have reduced price. We want to know what the original price. So I'm going to say total or original price. And then the other unit that we're comparing is, okay, we want to know what the original price is. We know what the sale price is. That's part of the original. It's less than the original, okay? Next thing, I'm looking for the percentage. So we look here, we have 55%. That should go above the 100. Now we have to figure out the 22. Is that talking about the sale price or the original price? Okay, well, first off, it says it's reduced to 22, so that should be the sale. Plus, in the question, it says what was the original price. So the sale price is 22. We don't know what the original price is. That's where our variable should go. Now we've got our proportion set up. We can highlight our diagonals and get ready to simplify. So the two numbers that I need to multiply are 22 and 100, which equals 2200. And the number I need to divide by is 55, which gives me 40. What were we solving for here? We were solving for the original price. So we're talking about money. So I'm going to use money as my units. For the U try, Stephanie received $400 for her birthday. If she spent 38% of it at the mall, how much money did she spend?